Welcome to Talking Jazz. My guests today are Sara Serpa and Andre Matos, the brainchilds between a brand new release that was just released actually a week ago, Nightbirds. And we're going to talk about the music today. We're going to talk about you two and your work today. And I'm really excited to have you. So welcome, Sara and Andre.
Thank you, Monika. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you for having us.
So, in order to get to know you, let's try the Sara and Andre in a nutshell. What's your musical background? How did you get into this jazz thing? And how did you end up in New York? Give us a synopsis there.
I was born and grew up in Lisbon. I've always been around music. I started playing piano at a very early age, 7 years old. And I sang in a choir also for quite a long time until I was about 18 or 19 years old. So music has always been part of my life, but I never imagined that I would be a professional musician just because that option was not something that I could see available for me. Also, in Portugal at that time, there was only mostly the classical music, like I was at the conservatory, like so contemporary and modern music was not really something that was available in schools. And so after many years of being in music, I felt a little lost when I turned 18 and had to choose colleges. And so I went to an art school where I studied for 2 years. And then I ended up doing my undergrad studies in social work in a psychology college in Lisbon. And it was only at the end of that undergrad studies that I discovered jazz. So I think I had heard jazz before. And there was an album that accompanied me for a long time, Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong. I knew that album by heart from long car trips when I was a kid. Getting into the jazz school was kind of a door that opened for me because I realized that I could do something in music that was not something so strict and rigid as the Western classical music. And so started slowly, like kind of, wow, like what is this improvisation? Realizing also that all the background that I had from all the years studying music was really useful. And so like once I realized that that was what I really wanted to do, like I put all my energy into it and I started doing summer workshops and I met some Portuguese musicians that were at Berklee at the time that encouraged me to apply to a summer program. And so like I did, and that's where I met Andre in Boston. I
Oh,
I was already there. And then coming to Boston at that time was also again like an eye opener. Like there was this huge school with huge resources. You could really focus and professionalize. And I got a scholarship. I went to Berklee for 3 semesters. And while in Boston, then I also started connecting with people at the NEC, New England Conservatory. And later I realized I could apply for a master's program there. That's what I did. And so I did my master's program at the NEC where I studied with Dominic Eade and Rand Blake and Danilo Perez and Frank Kalberg and John McNeil, Jerry Bergonzi, so many people. And yeah, those years in Boston were really crucial, really important. It was kind of almost like a intensive laboratory of just kind of experimenting and focusing a lot. And so coming to New York was the next step. Everybody was coming to New York after graduating. So we came to New York really thinking, oh, let's just go for 1 year and see how it goes. And so we've been here for 15 years. So that year has been really long, and our son was born here in Harlem, so it's been a nice journey. Also, like watching the New York scene changing with the years, like when you arrive, it's kind of shocking almost, like the energy of the city. And I think now, like, it's kind of interesting to look back and see, wow, like when we moved, there were still so many jazz giants around, so we got to see a lot of musicians playing so many times, and now it changed. The scene is changing, always changing, of course, but there's a little bit of a nostalgia about those early New York times.
Yeah, those years can expand. We left in 88 for a 1 year exchange program that became 35. So you never know. Well, I would say, Andre, let's get all your story in the next segment so we can throw some music in between and give you, your due time to get your background. But that's a really exciting story. The first one we're going to listen to is called From a Distance. And maybe you can just give us a little glimpse in how we should listen to this and some important aspects about it.
This is a very simple melody that I wrote maybe the day or the few days before our recording session. And the way we ended up playing was mostly like a prelude quality to it. It reminded me of something like Wagner or something like, like the slow start. So when we recorded it, I immediately thought that could be the first song in the album. It takes a moment for the melody to come in and then it takes a moment to disappear. It's a slow start of the album, but I think it sort of prepares the listener to what's about to come.
I agree. And it's a beautiful introduction. I like the prelude notion. And, and we'll talk about the concept of the album too, which is important. But let's have a listen. So this is called From a Distance, and it's from the brand new album Nightbirds. For my guests today, Sara Serpa and Andre Matos. That was From a Distance from the brand new album Nightbirds by my guests today, Sara Serpa and Andre Matos. And we heard the story of Sara from getting to Lisbon and getting this jazz bug to Berklee and over. And Andre, you entered the story at Berklee, but trace back. Where did your story start?
Yeah, so I started playing guitar when I was about 9, and I think it was probably like a more immediate embracing in terms of, I think I knew that I wanted to do something with music early on. So when I did start, I basically had a guitar teacher, and I heard the music that my parents were listening at home. Some Brazilian music, some blues music, some jazz, rock, all the music that any musical home would listen to, and classical music too. When I started listening to blues, it quickly, I wanted to expand my options, and I started checking out some jazz as well. I think I remember, surprisingly, it was one Dave Brubeck CD that I had. It was probably one of the ones that I liked the most then. Yeah, I remember hearing Paul Desmond and being sort of enchanted by that sound.
Did you grow up in Portugal too, or?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from a town close to Lisbon called Sintra.
Oh, but you didn't know each other. It's just
we actually spent many summers in the same area, same background, landscapes and experiences, but we never crossed paths.
It's
How cool.
But anyway, so I went from having like a general guitar teacher, or a teacher that taught me like the very basics. Then I started having like a teacher that was more into jazz, and he introduced me to jazz players, jazz guitarists like Joe Pass, Montgomery. So I got started early on, like at 14, maybe 13, 14, checking that music out. So when I finished high school, I took a year where I attended the jazz school in Lisbon. The Hot Club is a jazz club in Lisbon that also has a school. That's where I went for a year, did a little bit of classical guitar studies as well. And right after that, I went to Boston. So I went to Boston like at 19 and stayed there for pretty much until coming to New York in 2008. So Boston was definitely important because I got to meet a lot of different people. The most important.
Of course, you have to say that.
And a lot of other musicians that, to this day are still part of my network of people that I think of and collaborate. Also fortunate to have studied with very influential teachers. So that was a definite experience for my musical life. And then since then, like moving to New York, Sara mentioned already, just having the chance to work here, older musicians with people that we were listening to in records, and but not only, also like the life experiences here, they define who you are and to an extent how your music is shaped.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. New York is such a central position in this jazz universe and the experience. And, we already listened to the first selection and got a little bit of taste of this album. The next one we're going to listen to is called Melting Ice. So you have a concept here behind the album, and there's an environmental spirit. And Sara, you mentioned that you have a social work background, so I can see your broader image here. So Melting Ice, give us a little glimpse on the concept and how we should listen to this.
I think the album is really a collection of songs that reflects many things that we have been thinking about and worrying about. And there are images that come, like Melting Ice was a freely improvised piece. So Andre, Dove, and I, we went to the studio and we made like a trio recording first. And we kind of improvised, made a few parts that were completely improvised. And then later on, I think it's Okyung Lee who plays on Melting Ice. And then we sent it to Okyung and to Sophia and to João just for them to kind of add their contributions. And I think like that's the image that came to me when I heard the song, you know, the music. And, you know, there's an environmental concern on the album and a message where we're taking all these landscapes and ecosystems for granted, but we're actually watching their destruction in real time and still we are not doing anything. So, I mean, it's something that I think about all the time, really. And, you know, like, for example, we were just in Boston this week teaching there and doing a residency at New England Conservatory. And even like the lifestyle of when you're traveling and the amount of plastic and trash that one makes, you know, like it's getting harder and harder to not think about it. And it's so hard, you know, like I think it's so hard to change these. So anyway, the album is hopefully a way of people to reflect a little bit and give it some time in their minds also to think about that.
Yeah, let's reflect a little bit. I like the cello on there, so it sounds a little bit like the ice is breaking. It's sawing away. Maybe that's the image. But yeah, let's reflect on it. I'll ask you a little more about it. So here is Melting Ice from the brand new album Nightbirds by my guests today, Sara Serpa and Andre Matos. That was a track called Melting Ice from the brand new album Nightbirds. Sara Serpa and Andre Matos are my guests today, who are the brainchilds behind the album. And we just talked a little bit about the environmental footprints that we're leaving. And I was actually just at a conference where a lady presented about the responsibility, especially of us musicians, to be models and to make people think about this environmental threat and the things we can do. And it was interesting. Some were agreeing and some were like, what do you mean? Is there jazz that's environmentally friendly, or how does this work? So maybe we can discuss and reflect a little bit more about the responsibility that we can take as musicians and how we could communicate that, and maybe what you had in mind.
Yeah, I would love to know the name of that woman that you heard speaking, because I do think that we musicians can do more, you know, and we see that social change and behavior changes happens when you have peer pressure, right? When people around you start doing the same thing. So, you know, thinking about touring, how can you make touring a little bit more sustainable? I mean, sometimes musicians are in a precarious situation where you can't really choose much. But if you have the possibility of choosing, you can definitely choose between having short flights or traveling by train, you know, for example, or even the way you consume foods. I don't know, like those are the things that I think about when I'm traveling. It's food and transportation. So those are the ones that definitely would create a bigger footprint when we're traveling. But yeah, I think there's still a long way to go, but there isn't much time, I feel. I think there's a little bit of a dissociation also, like with the reality and how we continue to carrying our lives as nothing is happening.
Well, a good argument was also that, we as musicians also already have to do so much, right? You have to create the music, you have to get the tour going, you have to do all this. And then even thinking about, well, should we take this one or not because it's environmentally friendly? Sometimes that's just not economically possible because the overall system demands that you appear at as many places as possible to be heard and to get a certain acknowledgement. So that was part of the discussion too. But what she thought is that we can also be models in what we communicate and use that in the music. And you obviously did that in the album, putting soundscapes on it. So that's what I was thinking too. What you're saying in the music was definitely hinting on that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's where maybe it will make more sense to do it is in the way we communicate and what we express ourselves. On the production level, on the touring level, if that topic comes to the table, I mean, that's already a big win, and if we can change one aspect of it or one minimal aspect of something, that will be already very good.
Yeah, we have a small tour next week here in the United States, in the East Coast. And for me, there was actually a concern about I want to travel by train to all these places, so they have to be kind of around each other. And so even thinking about that, like how you travel, I know it's not always easy, but I think also on an institutional level, there should be more grants. There should be more kind of thought about this, and how to help musicians making touring and even producing CDs a more sustainable activity.
I agree. There's a lot to be done. So Nightbirds is actually the title track of the album, and lots of crossing here in genres, crossing of sounds and scapes. Give us a little glimpse in Nightbirds and what we should listen to.
I don't really remember how those tracks go, I have to say.
Nightbirds is with Sophia.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think I know which one that is. Well, yeah, no, I know it could be embarrassing, but it's more that we took our full attention when we produced it. After things were, out there, I sort of completely disengaged from what's been done. And so right now, I don't remember, especially the improvised textures that we did. That was an improvised piece where I think listening to it after, the idea of Nightbirds came to mind, maybe to Sarah's mind.
Know, there's some kind of intensity in the piece that it's quiet. It feels like it's something brewing and something kind of that only comes out at night. There's kind of an idea that things go to sleep at night, and actually there's so much natural activity, right? So I think that's what came to our minds when we were listening to that improvised track.
There were different titles that came about, and I think the nocturnal aspect of it on that specific track was talked about.
Well, very cool. Let's see what comes to our mind when we listen to it. That's the way we should just listen to it and then make an image while we do that. So this is the title track, Nightbirds, from the album Nightbirds by my guests today, Sara Serpa and Andre Matos. That was Nightbirds, the title track from the album Nightbirds by Sara Serpa and Andre Matos, who are my guests today and are sharing with us how they put the album together and about their backgrounds. And this next one is actually pretty cool. It's called Watching You Grow. It features your son, Lorenzo, if I'm not wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And, I remember when my kids were little and I put them on the CDs and it was so cute when they were singing, and you just cherish that moment. And now they're 24 and 21 and going wherever. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about being parents and the joy of that and how you involved your son with, it sounds like a playful, just do something and you worked around it. How did you do it?
Watching You Grow is a composition that I wrote actually during the pandemic. It was a commission by the Jazz Coalition. It really reflects, we were home with our son and we were doing homeschooling, and it was really exhausting and intense. But at the same time, it was really beautiful because we kind of really had a glimpse of what it is to learn how to write, how to read, how to do math. We were kind of really present during that whole process and simultaneously organizing life around that, and just kind of, okay, this is school now we're going to go outside. It's so beautiful to watch a child grow and see becoming little persons, right? And helping them understand the world and process the world. And Lorenzo loves soccer. He's been always really obsessed by soccer from an early age. And he has a very strong imagination. And many times he's imagining a soccer game and he's just kind of reporting the soccer game. And we often record it because he's really kind of, and there he goes, and it's goal. He does the whole thing in this very sweet voice. And so it was the perfect kind of soundtrack to add to the song, because these are precious moments, right? When they're imagining and when things are really real in their minds. But for us, we're just watching him just kind of talking and saying stuff. And it's really a privilege to be a parent in that sense. Just watching a mind becoming a grown-up. He's still 9 years old, so there's a long way to go. But yeah, and I don't know if you want to add something to the joys of being a parent.
What choice? No, there's that sort of the radio broadcast, football broadcast, that we always thought it had a rhythmic quality, and it could be musical almost. And in the past, I've captured, without him knowing, obviously, I've captured him singing or doing those kind of things. And I try to play around it, and see how a very childish little song, just it was so musical, and I could find so many rhythms and little melodies in the way he phrases the words. So yeah, we decided to include that.
No, I totally agree. There's so much natural in when children just go into imagination, and honestly, we as adults, we should go back and learn from that and keep that imagination. It's so sad we keep losing it the older we go. So thank you for reminding us of that and putting that in. So Watching You Grow, let's have a listen. So this is from the new album Nightbirds by my guests today, Sara Serpa and Andre Matos, and also featuring their son Lorenzo on it.
There he goes, Manchester City! Oh no, it's a goal for Manchester City! And there he goes, it better go and hit the post in front! Oh, that was a mistake, sorry. There he goes, and a goal! Another goal, this time by Mbappe! Manchester City.
That was Watching You Grow, a track from the new album Nightbirds by my guests today, Sara Serpa and Andre Matos. And we talked about family, about environment, and we're going to hear a lost whale now. But something, Sara, that you're also involved in is a group mutual mentorship for musicians that you did with Jen Shu. And I followed a little bit, but tell us a little bit about that group and your activities in that.
So it's an initiative that Jen and I co-founded during the pandemic. We wanted to address the fact that we barely had any women mentors or like role models, and imagining a way like how can we create a mentorship initiative that can involve a multi-generational group of people, and also where there's no hierarchy, where there isn't like a top down. Usually mentorship is like the mentor is on top and has all the authority and power, and the mentee is kind of following the mentor. And so initially we invited people from our group. We decided, okay, let's start with a group of 12 musicians, and the idea is we pair the musicians with someone they have never collaborated before and commission them to create a piece together. So that's over 6 months. That's the thing that they have to create like in duo. At the same time, we have group meetings twice a month where we listen to each other's music and each other's lives and experiences. Most of the musicians will have to moderate the meeting too, so everybody can bring a topic that they want to discuss. So many times we talk about career, like life choices, things that in particular women, non-binary musicians and the represented gender identities have struggled with and haven't been voiced out in the world, or have been mostly kind of whispered amongst ourselves, but not really kind of feeling that we can have the room to talk about those things. So it's been wonderful. It's been like 3 years that we have been working on this. And so initially we did 6 months back to back. Now we have like a 9-month season where 6 months we have group meetings and they finish their commission, and then 3 months where the musicians involved have to write an essay or a piece for our anthology of writings. And also this with the idea of changing a little bit the narrative of music and having other gender identities talking about music and talking about life experiences and perspectives. And finally, also we instituted a Lifetime Achievement Award to the elder musicians part of the M3 community, addressing also the lack of visibility of older musicians in our scene, in particularly women. They kind of, once women get older, they disappear from the arena. Men are viewed as geniuses and women are just kind of, So it's almost like a full-time job these days. It takes a lot, like just to kind of manage. And we also have a festival. So we just had our second annual festival go at roulette, where then the musicians have the possibility of presenting their music and meeting each other, because we all spend so much time together over Zoom, but not in person. So it's really a moment of kind of celebration and gathering where we all get together and see each other face to face. It's been a wonderful experience. It's kind of like building a new community and watching also like new relationships blossoming, people collaborating with each other in different places and really changing the landscape a little bit. So it's been great.
It sounds wonderful. And I love especially the aspect that music is created through that mentorship. You know, often it's just, oh, let's chat and talk and hug, but that you're actually, you know, honing your skills and getting mentored. That's really important.
Yes, and I think sometimes musicians do get to stay a little bit in their own protected world, you know, so having to collaborate with someone that's maybe in a different country or a different culture, it really makes them have to reach out, you know, and find ways of making things work. And also learning, you know, like you might have older musicians that don't know much about technology, you know, you'll have like younger musicians looking really for answers to many of their questions and doubts. So I think it's a win-win. It has been a win-win situation for everybody involved. Yes.
That's very cool. And thank you for giving so graciously of your time to do that, because I know that takes a lot of time and energy. The whales are lost. Any glimpses, anything to add to the lost whale?
Pretty much like the other ones, the other improvised pieces. I think the title came after. The idea of the whale was first, and then the being lost came later.
You know, like I actually remember seeing these news of all these ships, you know, the cargo ships in the ocean, and how they disorient the whales, you know, like their movements, their migration movements, and how like they kind of get lost with so much traffic in the ocean. There were some kind of sounds of...
I also read an article recently that talked about how whales are very social. I think the males, when they grow, they sort of wander around by themselves, but the mothers, they stick together, and sometimes they do get lost. There was a process there. I mean, they search for the lost whale. Sometimes they get lost because of thieves, because of like some sort of change, or they just get lost playing. Yeah, but that came after the
fact.
After
the music was created. Yeah.
Yeah, when you can hear it. It's a great image, but you can hear the sounds of looking and crying out of the whales to find it. So very cool. Again, make your own image while you listen, because that's the purpose of it. Just close your eyes. This is Lost Whale from the brand new album Nightbirds by my guests today, Sara Serpa and Andre Matos. That was a track called Lost Whale from the brand new album Nightbirds by my guests today, Sara Serpa and Andre Matos. And we got to cover a lot of ground. We're saving the whole world by this conversation today, hopefully.
I wish.
Yeah, we wish. We're trying. But yeah, I mean, what's next for you two? I'm actually curious when you take this on the road as an album release, since it's all improvised pieces and it's the two of you. How do you approach an album release concert of this?
Yeah, so we had two shows already. We have a week-long tour next week in the East Coast, but we had two shows, one in Boston, one in New York. The one in New York, we actually played with a full band, with a bass and drums, along with Dove Mansky, who is the pianist and also plays synth in the album, who's been collaborating with us for a while. We essentially played the written compositions that are featured in the album, along with some other written compositions from the previous two albums. And we play around those pieces, occasionally like improvising intros, or we just use that as a starting point. In the studio, we literally played from scratch. We haven't done that live as much because, yeah, like I said, we depart from written material. On the next tour, on the next week concerts, we're going to be playing with Dove Trio as well. So it just naturally happens that when you have like a series of concerts, one after the other, things start naturally to look for other possibilities, and otherwise can get a little boring, so you start like taking more chances and trying different approaches and just maybe start to tune in a different spot and just like shuffle things around a little bit. So there'll probably be even more improvisation than there was in the last two concerts.
That's really cool. And I love the approach of not saying, okay, here's a head, and then you take a solo and a solo. It doesn't work. It's so natural just to interact and let the music speak and evolve.
The more you play, that starts to dissolve a little bit, that recipe, also like the nature of our compositions, most of them can be approached that way. They don't have to be played from point A to point B in that more traditional way.
So in order to keep up with you and find the album, where should people go? How can they find out everything and stay in touch?
I mean, these days, Instagram, we post a lot about the touring and the album there, and we have our links there. But the album is out on Bandcamp, Robalo Music. This is a Portuguese label. And also on our own Bandcamp, Sara Serpa and Andre Matos. It's also on the usual platforms, but if you want to contribute directly to musicians, Bandcamp is the platform to go, bandcamp.com. And our own websites, they also have the information, but we will be traveling. We start our tour in Philadelphia, then we go to Washington, D.C., Baltimore, New Haven, and Kingston. So it's going to be very active traveling, but we'll be posting about it on our Instagram for sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure yet when people get to hear about it, but just going to Bandcamp is absolutely very, very, very cool thing, these days, to make anything from recordings and get that investment back. It needs to go as directly to the musicians as possible. So Bandcamp, Sara Serpa, SARA and Andre Matos, ANDRE MATOS. Put it down, find it, and go direct and listen and buy a lot. So thanks you two for hanging out with me. We're going to have a Bartok piece to close it out. You took the Bartok's composition as the basis this last
Yeah, I
piece.
mean, we do basically just play the bagatelle, and it's a beautiful piece. Like it's one of my favorites. It seems like very simple but so complex harmonically. Like the interest in Bartok comes from a class that I teach at the New School on Bartok's and Duke Ellington's music. And discovering Bartok's music has been, or exploring more, like doing more research on it. It's always like a huge inspiration. And there's so much connection to modern jazz, to many harmonies that are played today. Sometimes when I play that song, a lot of students say, "Oh, this is jazz." So I think it was a good way to close the album, and also just for us to enjoy something that it's clearly notated how to make it work in a format that wasn't written for, with voice, guitar, and synth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the amount of some dissonance, like that's written, not that much, So I think there was actually like a review somewhere, the record, where the reviewer mentions that we just literally play the chart. We don't really do anything to it. We don't really improvise. Well, actually, the challenge there was to work on like perfect blending, on the perfect blending of the voices and just deliver the piece as it's written.
Mm-hmm.
It was quite a challenge, actually, believe it or not. So like it's just like there's like very little added, to the, maybe just on the textures and the sound and the way we mixed it, but it didn't need
Yes,
anything.
exactly. Doesn't need it.
It doesn't need
Lives
more.
by itself.
Right. Very cool. Well, thank you again for sharing today. It was a wonderful conversation, and we'll take it out on the Bagatelle Opus 6 by Bela Bartok. And this is from the brand new album Nightbirds. And my guests today were Sara Serpa and Andre Matos. Thank you. for listening to Talking Jazz. My guests today were Sara Serpa and Andre Matos, talking about their brand new album, Nightbirds.
You can hear Talking Jazz every Thursday at 11 a.m. and Mondays at 7 p.m. on WETF 105.7 in South Bend, Indiana, or online at jazzradiowetf.org, and Fridays at 8 p.m. on WICR 88.7 Indianapolis. Previous shows are also on my YouTube channel, Monika Herzig, MonikaHerzig. Please subscribe to the Talking Jazz playlist. Thank you for listening.